Where's Amanda?
Touchdown.
Oh, hi, Amanda. Hi.
All right, thank you everybody for joining us this evening. Sorry we're a little bit behind schedule. Today is August 5th, 2025. We're here for the purposes of a Salt Lake City School District Board of Education meeting. The first thing I would like to do is to welcome everybody that's with us this evening. Thank you for being here. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge our association presidents who are either with us in the building and in the meeting room or joining us online. For our buildings and grounds, we have President Elia Ocampo, Child Nutrition, President Tanya Slaughter, Transportation, we have Audrey Benali, and then for our SLEA, for the Salt Lake Education Association, we have President Mike Harmon with us, and for SLASA, our Salt Lake Association of School Administrators, they are represented by Tom Luthi. Thank you for all you do for our employee groups here in Salt Lake City School District. We have all board members present except for Board Member Bade, who is excused this evening. We'll move on to the Pledge of Allegiance, and I have a very, very special guest. She's in the back of the room. Her name is Ivy. She's a student and daughter of one of our teachers who's going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Are you ready?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ivy. That was really, really cool and really, really brave to do that. It's not easy in a group of a bunch of people you don't know, huh? Perfect. Moving along, we have our consent agenda. We do have a board member request to pull item number 9 and move that to our action agenda. Other than that, did I understand your requests, Ashley, to be accurate?
Item 7 and item 9.
Item 7 and 9, sorry. Okay, perfect. Thank you for that clarification. So moving along, I would entertain a motion excluding items number 7 and 9 from the consent agenda. To be
So
attached.
moved.
Second.
Second, perfect. Any discussion to the motion? All right, seeing none, we'll...
Board Member Anderson.
Oh, sorry, I missed you.
It's okay. I am happy to approve the McKinstry item, which is item B. It's attached exhibit 2B1B. But I wanted to share that I had sent an email, which I'm happy to supply to attach to the minutes because I'm discussing it publicly, about the need for a cost-benefit analysis on this aspect of the sustainability plan, because it's my understanding that some of these expenses would come back to us for us to review and balance our desire for sustainability with our ongoing fiscal responsibilities. Our business administrator, Alan Kersley, suggested by email that in October, there's an annual report and the presentation of a cost-benefit analysis of the growing expenses for ground source heat could be best included in that report. So I just wanted to bookmark that potential date in October and the need for some additional discussion on ground source heat. Thanks.
All right. Hearing the discussion, could I just kind of get like a thumbs up if folks are good with that as a board so we make sure we get that scheduled? Okay, perfect. Thank you, Ashley, for the discussion. Any further discussion to the motion?
I do have.
Brian?
This would just go to the purchasing report, Alan. I just like a clarification. When I'm looking through that, there will be requests for like $49,000. And I know the benchmark is $50,000. When they're making a request for, I mean, it looks like it's very close to the 49,000. Is there documentation showing that, or are they trying to build in some leeway? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Right, so the 49s are often, I mean, they're based on either a bid, if it was an RFP process, estimates, and just to note, in the event that there was a change order needed and that PO would increase and would make it over the 50,000, then it comes back to the board with the $50,000 process. Sometimes you've seen that on the change orders.
Yeah, I have seen that on the change,
Yep.
but I just wanted a clarification on how that.
Yeah, so even though they're below the 50, and if they end up being above, then they're coming
Yeah,
back
then they
and
move
they're
to
going
the
through the,
other.
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Al. Thank you, Brian. Any other points of clarification or questions as part of the discussion? All right. Seeing none, we'll start with a roll call vote with Board Member Longwell.
Amanda Longwell, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Charlotte Fife Jefferson, yes.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Ryan Jensen, yes.
All right, that motion passes. We'll move on to the next portion of our agenda and revisit items 7 and 9 on the action agenda. So our next portion is our request to speak. I do want to read a brief statement that the board has asked me to read governing your all's comments here tonight. The board enjoys the opportunity to hear from the public during the comment portion of its meetings. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to remind you of our board rules governing your comments. The total time reserved for public comment is not to exceed 15 minutes, with all speakers or groups limited to 3. The board will not allow public comments during board meetings that are slanderous, obscene, or otherwise violate state or federal law. Employees and/or their representatives may use the public comment period to address issues that should be raised through existing formal communication channels or established grievance or negotiation procedures. I'd also like to explain that unless the speaker's topic is already on the agenda, state law prohibits the board from taking action on items raised during the public comment period. However, if it seems appropriate to the circumstances, I may direct district staff to follow up with the speaker on the topic discussed. Our first speaker this evening is Matthew Toohey. Matthew?
Talk about closure of several courtesy bus stops, including one that impacts my kids on Kennedy. It took quite a while to get this information, but after a productive discussion with Executive Director of Auxiliary Services, Isaac Astle, I understand that basically this boils down to a budget issue. The district's been paying for these courtesy stops out of a general fund for several years, and about a year ago, a little over a year ago, it was decided that one way to cut costs would be to get rid of them. I have a problem, or I guess concerns about that for 2 reasons. First, as I read the administrative rules, there's a provision that will allow the district to apply for funding from the state in a way that wouldn't impact its operating budget. If we look at R277-600-111A, it says when undue hardships and inequities are created through exact application of these standards, a school district may request an exception to this rule, and this is the entire administrative portion of the code governing bus stops, basically, and transportation funding. You can request an exception from the state superintendent. In my discussions with Isaac, he said that that was not explored, and I think it probably should be, right? But second, even if it's not an option to get additional funding, I think I and many other parents are concerned about decisions to cut back any type of student services in kind of the financial environment that's existed over the last several years, right? We have year-over-year increases, substantial increases to per pupil funding. COVID gave a bunch of money injections into the overall budgets. And of course, it's been enough to build this $58 million building, to raise executive administrative salaries substantially. The administrative suite alone, salaries over the last 5 years have gone up more than $1 million a year. And I'm not criticizing any individual administrator. I would assume this is the market rate. And I've looked into many of your backgrounds, very impressive. But I think everybody would agree that the optics are pretty bad when we build $58 million buildings and cancel bus stops. Not just in my neighborhood, which is quite affluent, but I understand that the first step was to cancel a bunch of stops on the west side, which I think probably face more undue hardship than the kids in my neighborhood do as a result. And so to that end, I'm going to follow up with this statement by emailing each of you individually and asking that you support my effort, 1, to explore the option of applying for state funding from the Transportation Fund, and 2, that we get a better and more detailed explanation for why we're facing funding challenges at all, given the way that education funding has gone over the last several years. And I also want to say with my last few seconds here that I know most of you probably had little, if anything, to do with the situation that we're in, right? I think the longest tenure here for the board members is 2 years and 9 months, and I know that these things take time. But again, the optics are quite bad, and I think it's that parents deserve an explanation. So thank you, and I'll follow up via email.
Thank you, Matthew. Our next speaker this evening is Judith Altamirano. Judith, are you here? Oh, perfect. And Judith, we know you have a translator. Por favor, vente a nosotros en la frente. Gracias. And tienes 3
Natalia.
minutos. Y
Hola.
Natalia Sola.
Sí.
Gracias.
Sé que tienes un intérprete y quiero que estés aquí enfrente por 3 minutos.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Bueno, yo escribí una observación que hice.
I've been reading some observations that I have,
Escribí en el sistema escolar
and
tradicional.
this is in regards to the traditional school
escuelas
system
privadas
and
del
private
distrito de
schools
Salt Lake City.
that are on the school district in Salt Lake City.
No están diseñadas para nuestros niños autistas.
They are not designed for our kids with autism.
A pesar de que tienen terapias y planes
Even though they
individuales,
have a lot of therapies and individual plans,
hay muchas cosas que tienen que ser modificadas
there are so
para
many things that are supposed to be modified for this,
para estos ambientes en realidad,
especially for this kind of environment.
que sean apropiados para
They
nuestros
have to be
niños.
appropriate for our kids.
Rutinas inflexibles,
The routines are not flexible.
horarios saturados,
The schedule is kind of packed.
mucho ruido externo
There's a lot of external noise
en las aulas,
at the classrooms.
poco espacio o nulo espacio para una autorregulación.
There's not enough space for auto-regulation.
Todo esto tiene que ver con la rigidez del sistema.
And all this, I know it has to do with the system, how strict it is.
Muchos niños necesitan adaptaciones sensoriales,
A lot of kids need some sensual adaptation
o métodos alternativos de comunicación,
or some alternative methods of communication,
como por ejemplo los AAC,
like AAC,
descansos entre cada tarea que se le exige hacer.
breaks in every chore or work that they have to do, any assignments.
En realidad no existe ese tiempo,
We don't have that time.
ni una adaptación individualizada para cada uno de nuestros niños.
And there's not any like individual plan adapted to each of our kids.
Sabemos que todos son diferentes.
We know that everyone is different,
Mi pregunta es,
but my question is
¿esto se llama inclusión?
this part of being included? It is inclusion?
Sumergirlos en un ambiente que no fue creado ni diseñado para ellos.
To have them in an environment that is not designed for them?
Necesitamos ver otras áreas para no tener a nuestros niños etiquetados.
We need to have our kids in a different area so they're not with labels.
No tener niños estresados,
We don't want to have them under stress,
ansiosos
anxious,
o como algunos les llaman mal portados.
or like some of us call them misbehave.
Y como madre de hijos autistas,
As a mom of autistic children,
levanto mi voz para abogar por nuestros niños
I want to raise my voice so can I advocate for them
y dejarles saber que estoy informada de lo que está sucediendo actualmente.
and let you know that I am informed of everything that's going on right now.
Les pido por favor que se ha rediseñado el sistema
I want to ask you to see if you can review the system
más entrenamiento para los profesionales que
so
trabajan
we can have more training for the professionals that are working with our kids.
directamente con nuestros niños. Sí. No sé, tal vez alguna remodelación en la estructura de las escuelas.
Maybe like to reconstruct the structure of the school,
El área sensorial,
the sensory area.
y pienso que es importante instalar cámaras en las aulas
And I think it's very important to have some cameras at the classroom
porque nuestros niños autistas,
because of autistic children,
sobre todo los que no pueden hablar,
especially the ones that cannot talk,
son propensos al abuso.
they are exposed to be abused.
Y es mi petición. Que por
And that's
favor
what I'm asking for, please.
tomen atención a esto.
Pay attention to all those things that I'm saying.
Como mamá azul, estoy levantando mi mano para
As a blue mom, I'm raising my hand so I can advocate for them. Thank you.
Muchas gracias. Matthew, thank you, Judith, y también muchísimas gracias. Moving to our next section of our agenda, we have the report section. The first item of business that we have there is our 2024-25 Title IX report, student participation in interscholastic sports. Dr. Grant, do you want to introduce us, please?
Yep, we have three presenters, so this is our annual Title IX report to the board. So Emily Sutherland, who oversees our athletic directors, Tina Hatch, who oversees Title IX, and Namani Suleimani. What? Satwala. Namani, I got your name off. Satwala. Satwala, I'm so sorry. Namani Satwala, who oversees athletics as well, with Emily going to present.
Okay, hi everybody. We're excited to present some of our findings for this Title IX report from last year, and we'll go through a number of different things. I will say it's interesting what a collaborative effort it takes to compile all of this information. It is very much a multi-department effort between business administration and Tina's compliance work and then athletics. It just takes a lot of people collaborating and coordinating to put this report together. So we'll go ahead and get started from there.
Thank you. So as you may know, we do this annually now. Utah law requires us to report on this. You received the report, and we're just going to highlight a few things tonight for you. I can't see the, are we on? Oh, are we not plugged in? Sorry.
I didn't know we had to plug in.
We do have a PowerPoint, so I'll give Emily just a second here.
Sam could also pull that up if you prefer.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I can do it. I just didn't know.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, sorry.
It's awesome.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I know what I'm doing. I promise.
The technical side,
Okay, go ahead.
right? Okay, so under federal Title IX regulations, there is a three-prong test to help us measure and to ensure that we are being equitable in athletics. As a district, we every year send out a survey for student interest to our students in 8th through 11th grades to find out what athletics programs they want to participate in and to get a little more information from them. It's actually really informative. Kids will give you a lot of information when you give them an opportunity. This year, our survey went out. We have sent it out to student email addresses in the past, and it has just gone out, and they've opted in and made their, time, their decision to participate. This year, we actually pushed it out during advisory periods, during our high school classes. And as a result of that, we have twice as many students who opted in this year as in the previous years, which is great. That gives us more information, more ability to meet the interests and needs of our students. So really happy about that. And I believe that moving forward, we'll get even better numbers in our responses and percentages as a result of using our teachers and class time to encourage kids to respond. As a board, in several years past, we have added several sports that were sanctioned by UHSAA as a result of these surveys and knowing that our students are interested. The most recent was boys volleyball, and this year esports has been added as an activity. And our kids were highly interested in esports, so as a board, you've approved something that kids are really excited about, so that's fantastic. This year, our kids were really excited about rugby, skiing, and hockey. None of those are sanctioned currently by UHSAA. We do have some skiing clubs that kids are involved in and things like that. But, as the people who oversee all of this, we'll be paying attention to UHSAA, see if there's more interest, if clubs start to kind of push on them to push rugby in or hockey. We'll hear about that and take steps, bring it to you if it's something that our kids are interested in. This year, one of the things that the surveys do for us is give us a chance to see where there are some concerns that kids might have, barriers to participation. One of the things that they came back with this year, and this was in person with a couple of students even before this survey, is that with the later start times, students miss an entire block of their class schedule to go participate in sports. And this can happen multiple times over a couple of weeks, the same class, and it is impacting these kids and their ability to keep up with the curriculum and with all of their academic, needs in their classroom. So we will be talking about ways that we can address that. We may come back to you and ask for some input at some point in time, but this is something that kids are concerned about, that they're missing these classes time after time. And the other thing that kids expressed that was a concern was that publications in our schools, basketball is exciting. When our kids go to a state tournament, it's exciting. We hear about that. It's on our social media. The kids know about those things, but they don't necessarily know when a golf tryout is. And so Emily and Nomani have put together an advertising plan, publishing plan that they're going to work with our athletic directors to implement through Parent Square and a couple of other methods. And we're going to make sure that kids have more information about all of our athletics activities. So that's going to be great, I think. So some of the highlights that we just wanted to bring to you, you may notice that there are some numbers that seem really disparate in the report that we provided. There are reasons for some of those things. For instance, when a football team has to have new helmets or reconditioned helmets, that can be pretty pricey. Those helmets are expensive, a lot more expensive than, say, a baseball helmet or a lacrosse helmet for the girls' team. And so you'll see differences. And Title IX doesn't require a dollar for dollar equal number. It requires that we're giving equitable opportunities and we're giving the equipment that the kids need, that we're providing the things that they need to be able to play and play safely. So those numbers may not look the same, but that's one of the reasons. Another reason could be that teams participate in many clinics, or maybe they go to the state tournament and the next year they get invited out of state to participate in a big tournament somewhere. And those travel costs can make those numbers look really different, but that's an opportunity that they've had, sometimes for their success. So that can make it look very different as well, just to consider as we move forward tonight with the rest of this. So we do allow equitable opportunities. We make sure that every team is able to fundraise, that they have opportunities for camps, that they have opportunities to participate in different trips and activities. Whether the coaches determine that they'll participate in those things comes down to the individual coaches. So that's one of the differences you may see. As you all know, the next highlight, we updated fee schedules this year. They're very different than they have been in years past. We talked to the board last year about examining those fees for our UHSAA activities and athletic events, and that some of them seemed a little bit high. With all of the changes this year, we're going to continue to track that and see if more changes are necessary and pay attention to that. And the foundation, our last highlight on this page, has been working with several entities at the clinic at West High School to ensure that our students don't have a barrier for getting physicals for athletic events. And we have provided more than 450 physicals for students at our clinic, which is fantastic. And that's since they opened, and we expect that number to continue. And for students who don't have access to health care, that is a huge barrier that is removed so that they can participate. So really pleased with that, and, you know, really thankful that we have the community members assisting us on that. As far as expanding our co-ed offerings, this year, for the first time, drill team is co-ed. And so that is something new. I don't know if we will have any young men who participate this year. We will advertise it so that they're aware that they can participate. And I have to say that we had a West High School student who talked to UHSAA continuously and really wanted this to happen. And I'm sure he's celebrating, although he's probably a little sad that it didn't happen in time for him. But that is a new thing for this year. And our unified sports program, we're gonna go into that a little bit more, but it is also expanding, and we expect to see some really good things from that.
All right, thank you, Tina. And I've had the opportunity to sit in many meetings with Tina and Emily and had conversations with parents and students and our athletic directors and coaches to help shape training and to make it more consistent across our district. And so we offered one in this room just 2 weeks ago, had a great turnout, learned a lot of things from that. And we're gonna be offering 2 more this year. And so in years past, we've offered one, but being able to get ahead and being able to roll out coaching requirements and agreements consistent with some other districts and best practices that we've seen, that in those trainings that we offer, we'll definitely go over some things that they may be familiar with policies around fundraising, overnight trips for our athletic teams and activities, and also something that is new for all our coaches, to have consistency with communication with not only their coaches, but with parents and their students, is that so Sam has been a great help in getting Parent Square out, which is a requirement for all coaches. So in the past, they were using all sorts of platforms, one that was even specific to a school. And now we're having consistency, being able to monitor that by doing some Parent Square, and then also having coaching agreements that they're gonna use Parent Square. And then we're requiring these for not only our head coaches, but different requirements for our assistant coaches as well, so that they're trained and feel comfortable working with students and teams, and especially just having consistency across with our background checks, fingerprinting. So excited to roll that out, and appreciate all the help with our principals and athletic directors and keeping coaches compliant. And so some things, as Tina already mentioned, excited for esports. I know that's not a sport considered by UHSAA, but it is an activity and does allow more opportunities, as we've already discussed this from the last time I was here. And unified sports, and so as Tina mentioned, we're being able to offer that consistently across all schools. And so we currently have a posting for East High to be able to hire their head coach, and so excited to be able to hopefully have unified sports at East High School as well. And then more importantly, that there's funding. So in past years, they were acting more of like a club and did their own fundraising, but we're excited for not only one-time funding, but ongoing funding to support our student athletes. And then some changes within our district is, as you may or may not be aware of, West High School is in a new region, so Region 4, so they'll still be in 5A classification. And then East High and Highland High School will be in Region 10, so they'll be in 4A. And excited about those opportunities and to be a part of those conversations and see how that plays out in the next 2 years. So as mentioned, I already went over how they're funded this year, and so thank you all for being able to push that through. And hopefully we'll start seeing increased participation with our students in a variety of different activities and athletic opportunities. So. And then I'm gonna jump into facilities and rebuild. So we met with Isaac, and so Isaac will go over more of this information on the agenda. later this evening, and also having conversations with Emily and our superintendent, making sure that our schools, communities are aware of some of these changes. And so we've met, and we're gonna meet with our principals and athletic directors to be able to offer these town halls. And then also, Yandere has invited us to be able to give us resources with communications, to be able to best field questions for any of our parents or community members that's just wondering what's going on with some of these updates. And so we're excited for these changes, and I know that they'll come with some challenges as well.
Okay, you may notice on the report that we had a significant increase in spending for swimming, and the district shared in the funding of new scoreboards at all of our swim facilities, so that's reflected on that report. So you'll see new scoreboards at Northwest, Fairmont, and Steinert, and those are partly from the district in our agreement with those facilities. Middle school, our community ed program is continuing to run our after-school sports program. And right now, we're still not charging any fees, and we do have a grant that will cover this coming year so that we will be able to have our students participate again without charging fees. So we're excited about that, and Dallin, the area director over most of our middle schools, is integrally involved in that as well. And, oops, sorry. That's basically the highlights from the report. Obviously, the report we submitted to you goes a lot more into detail on those things. But do you have any questions for us?
Amanda, and then Ashley.
I have two. One, you commented on, if I understood you correctly, that your communication, you're trying to consolidate down to one, which would be Parent Square. However, I know currently a sport at Highland High is using group chat still, or group spot. And so what's being done to help motivate that consolidation of communication? Streamline that, that would be lovely.
Yeah, that is a great question and a challenging opportunity. So I know people are invested in using, especially Group Spot, which is specific to Highland, and I get it. If I had an app and I rolled it out, I'd want everybody to use that. But we do find some challenges. There is student information in that. And they also are receiving benefits, as we've had conversations with that coach who is involved in Group Spot. And so Sam had a communication out. And so the thing that we are doing is trying to change that culture. And so we've sent out several communications with our principal and athletic director, Swede Robinson, to be able to push that out. And then I mentioned a coaching agreement, which is a contract, an annual contract. In there, they will click on it and say, yes, I agree to use Parent Square as the official platform for Salt Lake City School District. So I know not everybody will be on board, and it will take a culture shift, but we think being able to have consistency with communication across all our platforms will be definitely helpful. And I think parents will really appreciate it. I know Tina and I sat in a meeting, and parents are like, I have no clue what uniform to wear, specifically for Highland High School for a game. And so being able to have this, that we can better monitor these communications with our coaches and parents. And also, all parents will get a communication that's sent out to their students, so they'll be able to see the communication that coaches will get. Hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, I appreciate the effort to consolidate, because as a parent, there was a time that it was very overwhelming trying to keep track of all of the different communications. So as the district is consolidating down, it helps, especially when you have multiple kids and a lot of different things. The other thing is regarding unified sports. I guess my question there, obviously it's newly supported by the district. This will be the first year that we've got paid coaches and assistant coaches and whatnot, and having to help build it up in some of the other schools. I know you know the parent that really worked hard with the Highland High School setup. So my ask there is, what efforts are being done to think
basically coordinate with the standard sport that correlates with the unified sports, so that there can be instead of relying on the peer tutor program and the special education classroom for those kids that are volunteering for that to be the unified sports partner for the kids with disabilities, actually partnering with the sport like track, soccer, etc., and getting students that actually are playing those specific sports to come in and participate as a unified partner. So if you haven't already thought about that, it's a way to help this be successful in all the sports versus it just hanging out on a few kids to support the athletes in the unified sports arena. If that makes sense. If it doesn't, feel free to ask questions.
Yeah, that completely makes sense, and I'm excited to see how to gain more experience with unified sports throughout this year, and I'm hoping that with more like district centralization and funding and support that we can start to make inroads with some of those practices.
That would be great. Thank you.
Ashley?
I also have two questions. Recognizing that the federal grant space is always insecure, but probably more insecure right now, what would be the plan to support middle school sports if that TAP grant was discontinued?
I knew you were gonna ask that, so I'm so prepared. So I did actually ask Dallin about that, like what would we do if what was the plan B if that funding went away, because that is a concern. So his response was that we do have some concerns about that, and that if we don't have that grant, right now we don't have any like district funds earmarked for the middle school sports. So at that point, I know right now the grant, for example, doesn't cover referee fees. So I know the Salt Lake Ed Foundation is picking up those costs for this coming year, which we really appreciate. But if that grant went away, then we would definitely be looking for, if the district were interested in continuing middle school sports and having a conversation about how we could continue that. The other thing is we could start to charge fees. We do have it in the spend plan that we could charge our middle school students participation fees to participate. So that would also be something that we would have to look at.
That's hard. I think it's important for us to be thinking about that because most of us are so fee averse. Like, in fact, we did away with many fees above and beyond what was required by law, but also meeting after meeting, it seems like we're tasking the foundation with more and more potential expenses. And it's not possible the foundation could achieve them all. So I think it's really good to discuss. You've also talked about how there's some disparities in expenditures for a lot of reasons, like kinds of jerseys that you need or the cost of your equipment, but it also appears to be due to some coach turnover. Am I correct in understanding from your presentation that this is why the trainings are increasing, so that sports that are starting the year without a current coach will have access to that training before their season begins?
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's definitely the hope. I think having a new coach, they may not be as familiar with, like, for instance, having a new head girls or boys basketball coach, they may not be familiar that they do a tournament in like December, or similar to wrestling. So they may not be as comfortable if they're hired in fall or summer to be able to put together, figuring out transportation and figuring out logistics to get them there. So we'll definitely, as we have coaching turnover, we'll notice kind of some behavior and spending. And that's pretty consistent across all three schools. But then there's also consistent inconsistency. I know that's kind of a contradiction. And them purchasing uniforms or doing big purchases every few years. And so, yeah.
Yeah, there's just a lot of policies and procedures that they need to know for fundraising and overnight trips and things for them to do things properly so our kids are safe and, our finances are in order. And so we just felt like it was a much better practice to have several trainings, because we have some coaches who don't come on board until January, and we need to make sure that we're having these rolling trainings so that they're getting the same information.
I said two, but I actually realized just now I thought of another one, which is if a sport doesn't have a coach filled, from a Title IX perspective, I know we're required to offer equal opportunity, right? So if a coach isn't filled, does that change our Title IX compliance for the subsequent year?
For the subsequent year?
Like you
For
are giving us the
this year.
report, the recap
Right.
right now. So the next time
Right.
we did that, if we had an instance where a sport did not run because there was no coach, would that impact our future Title IX compliance?
I think it could, but I don't know that we've had an instance where we haven't had the sport run. You know, at this point in time, that hasn't happened. I know we've had concerns this year over lack of participation, for instance, in lacrosse. And that was West High School, right? That was concerned that they were, and East, struggling to get enough students, not coaches. But we've worked with our athletic directors to ensure that those teams can go ahead and play, and we'll continue to do that. And if there's not a coach, we're gonna find a way for the kids to participate. We wouldn't want them to lose the opportunity. Hopefully, we have an assistant coach in place. Typically, we do. But that's gonna be a case-by-case basis.
Thank you.
Well, I was just thinking about possible funding and working with like Real Salt Lake or different pro athletics, but that's what the foundation does, right? Yeah. So, I did have a question about popularity of sports, like, I think I heard at East about soccer teams, I think it was about how to give more players opportunities to play soccer. If they're not on the varsity, I mean, is there something, have you thought about that? Is that being addressed?
I think I know the problem that has come up about soccer is that we have more sub-varsity teams for girls than for boys. And that has been the concern from our community at East, is that, like, there's a lot of boys who want to play soccer at East, and we just have fewer opportunities, fewer teams.
Yeah.
It's not for lack of wanting, for lack of student interest, but that does end up becoming a Title IX issue.
Right, it's been over several years, you know, it's keeping this equitable opportunities in balance. And so one of the things that has been done to keep us balanced is no freshman soccer teams for the boys at this point in time. And, you know, if we have a lot more female sports come up, we may be able to make some shifts in that, but at this point in time, in order to keep that balance, we don't have the freshman boys soccer teams.
I have one question relative to the survey data that you collected from students. Is what we're seeing, like with the interest in rugby and skiing and hockey, are those similar trends that we're seeing in the state of Utah amongst other LEAs and school districts and student bodies? And do we anticipate that UHSA might actually adopt some of these like we saw with esports and whatnot?
I haven't talked to UHSAA individuals about the interest yet. I do know rugby is huge right now. I don't know if the club coaches who have put together teams are interested in working with schools. I know our lacrosse teams, lacrosse had a big push several years ago and became a sanctioned sport. And it's been very different for those coaches who came into our schools to abide by UHSAA's guidelines. And so sometimes I think wow, this is more difficult than we thought. I haven't heard that the rugby community is doing that. I do know that rugby is growing almost exponentially among a lot of students, teenagers, club teams. And so we may see that. UHSAA has kind of got their, fingers on that pulse of what's happening with club teams, and we kind of pay attention to that. But that's a bigger conversation than we can alone have, so.
Thank you, I was just interested to see. I appreciate it. Any other, Brian?
First of all, I appreciate, Charlotte's comment about the soccer question at East High, and I appreciate your awareness of that. I think that is something that's minds of a lot of people. I guess going along with that a little bit, I know that you have limited freshmen from the soccer, but there are other sports where freshmen can participate. And one of the challenges that I'm hearing is, and this was also brought up by Board Member Anderson, I mean, when we lose coaches and all of those things, it's devastating in many ways to keep everyone in the loop and get out notices and all of that sort of thing. I'm glad to hear that Parent Square is where you're focusing on this. Because what I'm hearing is there are freshmen that aren't being made aware of like schedules, so they don't even know like what the football schedule is at East and how do we get that information out to them. We got to have a plan here on how people get the word.
Yeah, so just two things. One, in terms of freshman participation, I just want to clarify that freshmen can try out and play for JV or for varsity. We just don't have a designated freshman team. So just to clarify, it's not like they can still play, right? And then regarding the advertisement of like opportunities, I would really like, I've thought of, in addition to Parent Square, 4 different ways that we would like to require schools advertise these opportunities. One.
I'm really keying in on this.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, are you ready?
I think we want to hear this.
Okay, so I'd like to make sure we have a designated tryout bulletin board at every school. I'm guessing, I know I've been around the schools and there are lots of spaces that are designated to athletics, but I would like to have a very specific one designated to tryouts and auditions for UHSAA activities and athletics. In addition, obviously PA announcements. I think we do a lot of those already, and I should say too, I want all of this in English and Spanish right from the bat. So we need, every time there's an audition or a tryout, an announcement over the loudspeaker. A lot of our schools do these every day anyway, so make sure we include those. It needs to be on our social media, and it needs to be on our school website. So, and again, that's in addition to Parent Square. So really 5 ways I want the sports, the opportunities advertised in English and Spanish. And I think it is making, like our sports are making appearances in all of these places. I just don't think it's consistent. And so I want to make sure that it's like that when you have a new, when there's a tryout or an audition, please make sure you check off these spaces that these things have all been covered.
I really appreciate hearing that. I think that you need to have consistency across the board and use those other platforms, because there are some people, like grandparents, and they don't have access to Parent Square, or, I mean, having those other sources makes it so that everyone would have an avenue to find that information.
Right.
Any other questions in this first round? Now we can jump to the second. Charlotte, second? Are you good? I'm good. Okay. Seeing no other questions, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
For being prepared and all that you do to impact extracurricular activities in our schools. It's really a big deal for us.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 2 of our reports agenda, we have a regular update on construction, progress, and athletic fields. It's my understanding that Isaac Astiel is out for personal reasons this evening, and so I'll turn the time over to our business administrator, Alan Kersley.
So I'm going to pinch hit and do my best. Largely, the memo that's attached, that was written by Isaac, is very detailed on some updates. So I'm not going to rehash everything that's in that memo. So I'm just going to highlight a few items. High school rebuilds, we continue the process. As noted, we're still in the design development phase. We hope to be able to have conceptual drawings out for the public, soon after school starts, as the architects continue. And he mentioned something in here that I want to make sure is very important. That as we design these buildings, we have to design them within a budget. we could build everything we want, but we don't have that kind of money. When we went out to bond, we went out for a specific amount, and we have to stay within those specific amounts. So that's part of what they're doing with the architects is, as they design, they also look at the cost, and okay, is there something we can do to bring the cost down if it starts getting over budget? So they'll continue to do that, and we hope in the next months to be able to start having some public information out there. As far as the temporary athletic fields for the rebuilds, we continue those processes, continue working with the city for West baseball and softball, and with other contractors to make sure that no sports teams miss a season, that there's a field available for them for their seasons over the life of the rebuilds. And I also want to highlight the Roslyn Heights athletic complex is nearing completion, but it is not yet done. It's still a construction site. We've had the public get on it, and we want to make sure they know it's still a construction site. I also want to make a public plea, and you'll see signs there if you go up there. Please keep your dogs off the turf part. Turf and dogs don't match very well. And if you do bring your dogs to the other grass part, and this is a plea for all of our properties, please clean up after your dogs. That's a plea to the public. Everything else I'll just leave there in the memo. If anyone, the memo's very detailed, but if there are any questions, I will do my best to answer them in the meeting or defer them when I get more information from Isaac.
Ashley?
I'm not gonna ask you my questions, but I will say, I do have a couple of questions that I think would be best answered by Isaac. What is the best way to answer those questions, given this report, and then would it be to send them in advance and have them prepared for the next report?
Yes, that would be the best.
And then the only other thing you may be able to answer is I had someone message me a question right before our meeting, so I couldn't ask in advance. But this memo indicates that Highland High will play at Dilworth in spring 2026, but I didn't understand that to be the timeline. Do you know if that is?
Yeah, the memo, there was something weird on the memo that I needed to ask Isaac for some clarification.
So because we can't answer it in the public meeting, recognizing that probably not all of the public cares about where Highland baseball will be playing in spring of 2026, there is a dedicated group of people who care, and perhaps we could direct an answer to them prior to the next meeting.
Right, we
Just
can
about
reach
that
out
specific
through
question.
the athletic director and through the high school with that information.
Just is the timeline as reported in the memo, is that a mistake? Is there
It's a
something?
mistake,
Great.
because the field will be in place for this whole coming school year
The
until
current
summer.
field.
The current field at Highland High School will stay in place through that early build process. And so there's no need to move the baseball program in this upcoming school year. So by the second school year, 26, 27, am I right?
Yes.
Yeah, 26, 27, then we'll have the Dilworth field ready for
That's what I
games.
think people thought. So
Yes.
that's good that we could clarify that. And then other questions, I would just send them in advance and they could be built into the memo in the next meeting.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
I just want you to know that Isaac confirmed that through text. So he's listening in and confirmed that.
Amanda?
For Isaac / Alan. I miscommunicated something to Isaac the other day after seeking further clarification after that meeting. But ultimately, just an ask is and this is specific to Roslyn Heights, it can apply to anywhere. I know that they're still under construction and whatnot, but where they're asking the students and the coaches to honor the time to get off the field so it can be locked up properly. There was a moment where the kids were pushed to get off earlier than their cutoff time. It wasn't by a chunk, but it was enough that it kind of threw a curveball as they were trying to get through all their seating competitions and stuff like that, and they were a little consternated. So just the students will work better at it, and those that are locking up, try to just honor that cutoff time and not get excited about shutting it down earlier than what's already previously allocated.
Thanks, Amanda. Are there any other questions for Alan / Isaac? Seeing none. Jennifer, I know you weren't here for personal reasons and celebrations of family last meeting, but we did extend a thank you to you and for all the efforts that you made with the city in coordinating with our district and making all these opportunities possible for our students. So thank you again. Now that you're here, I just wanted to highlight that we're really grateful for what you do for our students and our partnership together. You're welcome. All right, moving on to the discussion agenda. The first item of business is our process for new board member interviews. There is a memo that I was just going to read out loud so that the public and the community has a sense of how we're doing this process. And so as you know, with the recent resignation of board member Bate, here is a brief summary, and we can have some discussion if we need to as a board about our process. In accordance with Utah Code 2OA-1-511, the board is beginning the process to fill a midterm vacancy in Precinct 5 created by the resignation of board member Mohammed Bate. Starting tomorrow, August 6, 2025, applications will be available for those interested in being considered for the Precinct 5 board seat. In order to be qualified to hold this seat, state law requires that the individual have lived within Precinct 5 for at least 1 year, immediately preceding September 2nd, 2025. The application will be available online, or a printed copy may be obtained from the superintendent's office located at 406 East 100 South, Salt Lake City, Utah, 84111. All applications must be completed and returned to the superintendent's office by 3 p.m. on Tuesday, August 26, 2025. Applications will be screened to verify residency within Precinct 5, and then the board will interview all qualified candidates on Tuesday, September 2nd, 2025, starting at 5 p.m. in open meeting. The board will then discuss and take action on candidates. A swearing-in ceremony will be held for the newly appointed board member that same evening. The new board member will serve from the time of the swearing-in until December 31st, 2026. The Precinct 5 board seat will be up for re-election in November 2026. If you have any questions or need additional information on this process, please contact the superintendent or board president prior to 5 p.m. on August 5th, 2025. Any questions from board members? Charlotte?
Has there ever been a problem of having too many candidates?
No.
Probably
I don't
not.
think so. And I don't think that would be
Thankless job.
wouldn't be a problem for us, you know. I think it shows the interest in folks' care and appreciation for the students in our community. So I think the more, the welcome. So thank you, Charlotte.
Okay.
I'm gonna add just a touch more information to that. So the application will be available tomorrow on our website, and as well as information about the opening that was presented here by Board President Salazar. We've also created an application that is electronic. So applicants can fill it out and submit it electronically. The due date still stands, whether it's an electronic application or you choose to come in and get a paper version in order to complete the paper version.
Thank you, Superintendent. And the one thing that I would add that isn't listed that we've shared with board members is that the interview questions will be sent to all qualified candidates August 29th, 2025. So if you're anticipating on applying and you're qualified and meet those requirements, then that bit of information would be helpful for you as well.
On the 29th.
Just a piece of clarification, since I've been through this process myself.
Yes, yeah.
4 years ago. My question is, are they, as part of the application, are they expected to provide a written response to those questions, or are we just asking those?
Yeah, so the application has 3 questions on it, is my 4 questions on it, excuse me, originally 3, but through board members' feedback on those documents that we sent out when we knew that this was coming up, one of the questions from so there's 2 different sets of questions. There's the application, which does require written responses to 4 questions, and then we'll be asking each candidate 4 questions, one of which has been updated based on board member feedback. So if you do have board members' questions that you would like to be reconsidered as a part of that 4, please let Brian and myself know, and we'll take that under consideration as well.
And then I have a second part of that question. Will board members receive the responses to those written questions ahead of the interview?
Absolutely.
Cool, thank you.
Charlotte?
Wait, just clarification. You said if we have any suggestions for the four written or for, not for that,
For the ones.
for the interview.
The interview in the public meeting, yes.
Okay, so that's not set yet. Okay.
Thank you, Board. We'll move on to item number 2, strategic plan for student achievement revisions. Dr. Grant.
Great, we'll get our team up here. Annalise, do you want to, we're really not presenting anything new here in the strategic plan. You'll see that we can answer questions. The team is here that can answer those questions, but not presenting anything new. We shared with you answers to questions that were raised at the last board meeting about the strategic plan, so that you have that information in the memo, as well as what the new strategic plan would look like, again, that handout. So if you have any questions, we'd love to discuss those, and then would also like to get your approval to move forward with this strategic plan as presented.
Brian, please.
This would be a comment just to begin with. I don't know if any of the rest of you have problems, but the links that were provided in there, I don't have access to them, and that makes it difficult to follow it all. When you click on it, it just circles and circles, and then it says, yeah.
Is that true of all the questions one, or the plan itself?
Permissions.
Dr. Ruiz, could you right now email all the board members with that plan as an attachment?
That would be great, but I also think that it would be helpful for the public to be able, I mean, we need to fix that. So
Yes,
that
we
the
do.
public can see that.
It should say anybody with the link, right? Something.
Yeah,
Any-
somehow the permissions got mixed up on that. We also have, in the last 2-3 board meetings, had that same strategic plan there, so,
Right.
or at least the last board meeting, because we made one change to it, so that should be up there for people in public, even though this link isn't working. We'll get that fixed right away.
Great. Could I continue on?
Please.
Okay. You gave an explanation as to like the development of the pillars in the very beginning. That was one of the questions. When were those pillars actually established? I mean, the pillars were there when I joined the board, but I'd like to know, I mean, you're talking about committees were convened when we were in the process of working on this particular strategic plan, and we developed these pillars. I just chronologically like to know when that was.
Dr. Hall's running it through her computer of a
Okay.
brain right this
She has a
minute.
computer brain, and if you don't have it right now.
It was 2023 when the strategic plan was approved in spring of '23.
Okay, before I joined. Okay,
Just barely before you joined, about 6 or 7 months. Yeah.
that's when you were really working. Okay, that just helps me. In part of those answers, you talked about different assessments that would be done to ensure that the strategic requirements were being met. And I mean, you talked about what school walkthroughs, and I mean, there was a list of like 6 of them. ECAP was one of them. Has ECAP been revised recently, or is that?
It was revised for teachers.
Okay. Now, my next one. I think we've already answered that in another question, so I'm good.
Thank you, Brian. Are there any other questions for Dr. Grant? We'll start with Ashley and then Amanda.
My first question is in looking through the answers to the questions, the Power School is referenced and it says it's replacing Panorama, but I wanted to clarify, we don't have Panorama right now. So is this referencing a different tool or?
No, that was an error. Some of our staff have used Panorama when they've worked in different districts, so there was a familiarity with it, but we have not had it as a tool in our district.
And then because we're talking about using a Power School tool, there's a task force convened at USBE right now that would consider preventing LEAs from choosing their own SIS like Power School. Are we considering at all how changes at the state board level could impact the platforms that we use in the plan?
Yes, they've had that conversation for a couple of years. There's an interest in the state in all school districts using the same platform so that their data collection is simpler. They have talked about reducing the number of platforms, but not creating one single one, because they're able to work with one or two or three, from what I understand. That decision's not been made, but Power School is used by enough districts that it's one of the ones that they were thinking to keep. So that's preliminary discussions in what they're doing. That would change things up for us drastically. It's a really hard thing for any district to migrate all of its information into a new platform. So all of the districts are a little dismayed at the prospect that they may have to take on that work, which even the work we've done with our website to update shows you some of the complications in the school information, or the student information system gets even worse. So we'll see what happens. I know the state wants to move in that direction, but we're not sure that they would take away Power School as an option.
And just to follow up, if they did take away Power School, what would be the process for amending our plan?
Good question. We could bring it here and amend it. Or we're gonna bring the pillars to you on a regular basis through the school year. We could add an amendment almost at any time.
That's really helpful. I had two more questions. The second is about Y2, and it talks about the issues that Yandre raised in the last meeting about a survey that was sent to likely voters, so it's not really getting the information that you wanted. Was there any response to the feedback about the stakeholder survey in terms of survey design to make it more effective for use?
Do you know, we looked at, I asked around a little bit, do you want to speak about validated surveys or just how to make it more useful generally?
I mean, I think validation is one of the parts.
To try and get more response, a higher response rate particularly?
Or understand whose responses we're getting also.
I do think we get that information, if I've got a survey person, I don't know if that would be Dr. Hall. If I can bother you for a moment.
We're still trying to figure it out.
You're trying to figure out the link? Thank you for digging in on that. Just survey responses on our stakeholder survey. I'm not sure which of our experts can answer that best for me. We do get an understanding of who has answered the survey, right? We have a demographic profile or some understanding of numbers on survey responses on the stakeholder survey. Will you come if you've got something there?
Yes, apologies. Dr. Hall and Sam Quantz can correct me if I'm wrong, but I would defer to Jeff from our newly named data team, whose official name I cannot remember at the moment, but he, I know, has the expertise to analyze that survey data, and so I would lean on.
But do we capture those? Do we have markers about who has answered the questions and who has not? We get a raw number of responses, so we have a percentage, but do we get other information about which schools?
I believe we do.
Things like that? Okay.
Sam, are you in the loop on that?
I think I'm gonna invite you all up, if I could.
We have this fancy new table as of last week.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's nice.
And once again, I'm gonna lean on Sam, so if I mess this up, because I talked with Jeff Lutz is our data analysis. On our data analysis, that's in the data and assessment department. It depends on which platform we use. If we're using Qualtrics versus Google Forms or versus Microsoft Forms, and it's also depends on whether it's an anonymous survey versus a labeled survey. So what would take place is, we could track by email addresses for our non-anonymous surveys. So we would know due to each one of the distribution addresses that we send to, or the group addresses that we send to. We can track through that mechanism. Am I right saying? I'm gonna make them talk too, since I got to.
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways you can do it. You can do it just like Dr. Taylor described. You can do, if you want more information, there's always that risk, right? Wanting to perform an anonymous survey, completely anonymous, where you're blind. And then you can ask questions like, what school do you attend? What grade levels do you have? Whatever. But then that provides people the opportunity to respond multiple times, which can throw off the survey. So you could also perform a secure type of a survey, which we do limit it, so only people could respond once, but then the data is secure, so only a couple people, nobody else sees besides those who are provisioning, so.
I'll add one thing too from, not well versed in the platforms, but in previous surveys that we've done, we did have a way to, for the families and stakeholders within the district, so employees and families only, we wouldn't be able to do this for general community members, for each person to have a unique survey link. And then in the past, when Dr. Amio led the department, we would be able to follow up and send a reminder email only to the individuals who had not yet responded, and we would be able to track which school, what role, et cetera, while still keeping confidentiality externally, but internally, that would help us to follow up as well. We can't do that with general community members, but we can do that with our own folks.
And we'd want to continue keeping a fairly anonymous survey with just some designations that may help us understand who's responding. It's something that we'll look into more and give you some more information on that, Board Member Anderson.
That's really helpful, and I think, just knowing the plan, obviously, all those components aren't gonna be written into this plan. That's part of what you're trying to do, is reduce it. My only other concern is that I think you've responded to all the information about the tools, different amendments were made based on the discussion. My only concern about approving this plan personally is that the link has not been active for everybody to confirm, and also for the public to confirm and raise additional questions. So would it substantially delay work on the strategic plan to approve in a subsequent meeting? Or?
No. I think if I'm getting a read from the board, there aren't substantive changes that you would like to see so far that it would throw off the work that we've already moving on to try and meet those expectations. And if that's so, then we're fine and we can put it on an upcoming agenda. Yeah, we'll get that link right.
You're getting that soon.
Thank you. Ashley, do you have any additional questions?
No, that answered all my questions, thanks.
Thank you.
Amanda?
I guess clarification, there's on the first page of the intro section, it says per board direction, we include the original measurable outcome regarding gender neutral bathrooms under pillar 4, page 13. I'm not seeing it, so I'm not sure where that is. And maybe I'm
gonna grab.
not reading it.
Is that on the one that was just sent to you?
Yeah.
And page 13 doesn't have the change?
Well, so the page is different. Let me go back to the website.
Sorry, Dr. Ruiz, we made the change to add the piece about the gender-neutral bathrooms. That shows up on the new document on page 13.
That's
I got it under pillar
4.
I just don't remember, it's under outcomes, measurable outcomes, pillar 4.
So
Let me pull
on
it.
this one, the by 2029, what you're trying to accomplish? Because what I see is long-term facilities, maintenance plan, reduce the current deferred backlog for capital budget, and that's it.
It's growing.
Okay.
I don't have that open either here right this moment. You know, what we could say to you is it will be in the one that you look at next time for a vote.
Okay,
Because that was agreed upon and we're putting that in.
so probably,
And it was
Yep.
added, if you give me a second, I'll find it.
okay, that would be
But you
lovely.
can move on.
Okay, I'll do that, because I always run out of time anyway. And then, a point of, I don't know the right word, consternation, frustration. I appreciate that it's being pointed out that there were committees that were involved in this process. I was listed on the last meeting as being on one of the committees, and there was a group of parents that we all rallied around, hoping to have meaningful conversations. And my frustration lies in that there's a lot of statement around it, like it was this big, robust, meaningful, impactful conversation, and parents left it and quit participating because it was not. And that's the best I can say without being really mean. So I'm grateful that there is an effort to do committees, but whenever it's stated in such a way that it implies that they were these like amazing, collaborative, impactful, embracive, like all of these things that really tend to apply. I've been on a few of the committees and,
They need to live up to that.
yes. And so they did happen, but, I'm slightly embarrassed having my name on this list.
Do you know, it's no longer in the new strategic plan that we have provided, the slimmed down version. We took out that front piece that had that listed.
And that's
So we
fine.
didn't
I'm just
describe
saying,
all
not
the
just
committees
specific-
and things that were participating. We didn't have all the names in that, so we've simplified it, so it's no longer on there.
And it's less about the names, it's more of if we're going to have committees on any, whatever it is, not just related to this, let's make sure that it's meaningful. People give a lot of time to participate because they really care, and so whenever it's relatively lackluster, like parents are like, they kind of, I guess for lack of better words, kind of feel like it's a joke. So it's just, in the bigger picture, it's just something I wanted to comment on because it's come up a few times, and I really wish that they would consistently be what they're represented as being. So that was more of a comment.
Agreed.
Thank you. Sorry, let me flip through here.
Board member Longwell, I found it.
You did?
Yes.
Okay, let's see it.
Okay, so if you go, this is the shorter version of the plan, the one proposed from June. I know, I tried it, but there's not a connect, I need a dangle, and I don't have with me. So right here under objective 1.1, new construction of district buildings will have gender
So it's in the
neutral.
updated one, it's not the one
restrooms.
that if we were to vote on today, it's not actually listed, so we wouldn't state as it as.
It
So
will be
what-
on the one that you're voting on. It should
Right.
be on the one that you have the link to.
That we're still working on?
Oh, because we're getting you the updated version, so you can
Correct.
access it, so,
But yeah, I see it's there.
yeah,
Awesome.
as one of the objectives.
Yes.
Thank you,
Okay.
Dr. Ruiz.
There, and then two other pieces, I mean, I've made my comments about it in general, and it is what it is, I'm not gonna argue that bit. I would say, with the testing, a parent brought up this, piece that some schools might test a subject per day or something like that when they're doing these testings, versus others might just do this big, long haul, the kids are exhausted. And so it allows schools to choose how they wanna do it, but the, testing outcomes may be swayed. So if you're comparing school 1 to school 2's testing outcomes, but the one's kind of pacing the kids and giving them that breathing room versus another approach, like how, that could, it's not comparing apples to apples at that point, if the kids are tested differently.
On which, are you
I can't give
thinking,
you specific tests.
which
yet, not the
tests?
names. I'm
Yeah,
just-
the state tests, are you thinking particularly, or?
I'm not sure which ones it was, but that was
Dr.
something that she
Hall?
noticed.
I'm gonna, is there research on how tests are conducted in terms of students' stamina and being able to take a test all sections in one day or across days, and what that says about the variation of testing
Outcomes.
or testing outcomes, but testing patterns across our different schools, how they choose to.
Absolutely. In fact, we looked at that ourselves with the most recent day where we did our ACT testing in one day and we did our Aspire Plus testing in one day. And the three high schools, and Emily knows this better than I do, but the three high schools gave different subjects in different order. But it was very interesting to see that the one that was the last of the three tests universally was the one that was scored less. So there is a point of time where there is only so much testing that you can do in one day, and then it's a diminishing return. So we are looking at that in terms of scheduling for next year.
Okay, I think that would be helpful, because our concern was like, if a school that is coming in a way that paces the kids better, so you don't have that exhaustion piece to it, and that subsequently they're scoring higher versus other schools don't even know that that's an option, if it's an option, and then their school may consistently be testing lower because of that piece alone.
And I'm sorry, was this an elementary or middle or high?
These are elementary related conversations.
So, yeah, the other thing that can happen there is that we have very wide testing windows. So the testing window could be anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks long. And a school, for instance, who chooses to test early in the window may have a different amount of instruction that's occurred before a school that's tested late in the window. Sometimes that's unavoidable because we only have so many testers and we can only test, we have to start and we have to get through to the end of the window before it closes, especially if it's a state test. And so both of those, both the placement of the school in the testing window and the length and duration of the test will have an effect on student performance.
So figuring out a way for that consistency piece so the kids' outcomes can be relevant to each other. Can I have 1 minute of somebody's time?
Well, let me do this first. Does anybody have any other questions on the first round?
I wanted to add,
We'll move into the second round. Amanda, your 2 minutes starts now.
Okay, thank you. My other comment was just on the WIDA data. I've heard a lot of concerns regarding the tech help and the general support with the WIDA testing. And so given that's a piece of this conversation and a piece of the whole dynamic, like figuring out how to ensure that that support is appropriate to help those involved in that process feel like they're set up to successfully help these students. So more of a feedback piece.
If you would do a favor too, when people raise those concerns, could you have them reach out directly, either to me and I can direct them to a staff member, or I can capture the information in a way that we have enough detail to make a change?
Because I know one predominantly is when they call for help, there's not always somebody that answers the phone to help them.
With the testing?
When they're in the middle of the testing. So I know that specifically is one of the things they run into. But yeah, I can work to get better details and send them on.
Because the people who are getting the test aren't, we would need more information to be able to react to that.
Fair.
Yeah. But we can do that, and we have a new assessment and evaluation person who would be overseeing a lot of the assessments that way, can help us out as well.
Awesome, thank you.
And Brian, you said that you had a couple of questions, at least one for the second.
I just wanted to make a comment, and that was, I really appreciated how you addressed the PBIS question that I raised in the last session. I think that it's important when we're dealing with all of these acronyms that the public understands what it is, but then not just what its name is, but what that is working to accomplish. So thank you for putting that in there. And it goes, also, I asked the question about SEL, and I appreciated your explanation of social emotional learning and having a welcoming opening and all of those sorts of things. I think it's nice for the parents to understand the directives that teachers are receiving.
Thank you.
Any other additional comments? It sounds like we're going to be pushing this to a subsequent meeting. Charlotte?
Under Pillar 2, are we looking to I was trying to find out, looking to increase graduation rates? Is that part of are there any objectives like that?
We did not write that specifically into the code. It might have been in Pillar 1 under equity, but I don't remember what was in Pillar 1.
It's always a goal.
Yeah, I mean, that's it's
Yeah,
always a goal for
I thought-
graduation rates,
yeah.
and particularly for each school. That's always one of their goals, is to increase graduation rates and raise our overall district graduation rate for sure.
And I was specifically thinking about the equity piece, about raising graduation rates between, the disparities between specific populations that have lower rates of graduation.
Definitely. Definitely. We see such differences by suburb, that each school attends to those disaggregated groups. Dr. Louise.
Yes. Hello.
Welcome back.
So we do have that goal under Pillar 1. It's an equity, access, and student support goal. And it's 90% of high school students will meet college and career readiness benchmarks before graduation. So that will include graduation requirements.
Okay, great, thank you.
Week 4, we threw you right into it, didn't we? Excellent. Any additional questions? I know we're going to push this to a subsequent meeting for obviously more review in the meantime, and then a decision hopefully soon. So seeing no other questions, we'll move on to item number 3 of our discussion agenda. Dr. Ruiz, Dr. Grant, thank you. Board, thank you as well for the discussion. Item number 3 is new board policy P14. It looks like Ms. Kindle's coming up to the table up here. Before we get started, is there a representative from the policy committee that would like to speak to this before our discussion begins?
I think I'll just have a go at it.
All right. Thank
How
you,
about
Ms.
that?
Kindle.
And just for our new board members who maybe haven't been through this process of having a new board policy submitted to the board, this is a board policy that will have accompanying administrative procedures. And those administrative procedures will come before the subcommittee, and then if the subcommittee approves them, they will come before the whole board for approval. So it's unlike, and that happens the first time we propose administrative procedures, so we can ensure that those administrative procedures are implementing the board's vision in adopting that board policy. But we don't draft, obviously, administrative procedures until the board votes to approve a board policy. So in this case, board policy P14, salary supplement for highly needed educators, i.e. the SHINE program, is a new policy that's required by Senate Bill 173. A district is required to have this particular policy in place. And as I indicated in the board memo, the SHINE program is replacing the teacher salary supplement program. All educators who qualified under the TSSP are qualified under the SHINE program. So the administrative procedures will be just indicating how we will be administering the SHINE program, but no teacher will lose their eligibility for a stipend or a supplement who previously had it under the TSSP, if that makes sense. And for our district, the categories that we have identified as being hard to fill positions, so for the educators who are receiving these supplements or these stipends, it's secondary math, computer science, all SPED teachers, secondary math, science, computer science, and special education teachers. So those are our 4 categories. So given that, do you have any other questions? And obviously, I should say that I did email this policy around to all the members of the board policy subcommittee, and they agreed with the language in the proposed policy and recommended that it be placed on the agenda for discussion. Sure, secondary math, science, computer science, and special education.
Yeah, my only question is that state law changes a lot, and it doesn't always require that we make a new policy, and I don't know that we did have a policy for TSSP. So could you frame why this is an item that we would choose to enshrine in policy rather than just a general operational practice of the district?
Because Senate Bill 173 requires an LEA to adopt a policy to implement the SHINE program.
Perfect, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? Really quickly, because Bill, you only asked one brief question, so please continue on the round one. Oh, I was gonna ask for next steps and timeline, but that's after the discussion. Please go ahead.
So I'm glad that you listed which teachers it included, because I read the SB 173, and it did not stand out to me which ones it was relevant to. And so I'm glad to hear the special education teachers are part of this. There's usually concern about special education being funded outside of special education dollars. And if I understand correctly, this salary supplement is a different funding stream from the special education funding streams.
Yes.
And so, I guess, have you figured out how you're going to account for that? Because generally speaking, your special education teachers are coming from one funding stream, and then a portion of that's now this other, so explain to me how you're gonna do that to ensure that it truly is coming from this funding stream and not from the special education budget.
Yeah, so like was said, this is replacing the teacher salary supplement program, which has been around for years. And what it is it's not built into their contract salary. It's individual payments. With the old program, the teacher could select twice a year, once a year, 4 times a year. So it comes in on an individual separate timesheet that gets coded to the account coding that the state gives us for this particular program. And then when we report back at the end of the year to the state, we report it under that program reporting.
Perfect, thank you.
And the change, the state used to designate the categories of teachers. Now they have given districts the opportunity to designate the categories of high needs
That makes sense.
teachers, and
But
so
not
that's,
specifically outlined. So that's what our school district is determining as our
so
for.
HR takes a look at that and determines which ones are the hard to fill positions, typically to incentivize applicants into those positions. Yeah.
How often are you re-looking at that list? Theoretically, hopefully, not all of these will continue to always be the case, so.
I believe annually, is that
Yeah.
right?
That's what I thought.
Logan, annually. So this is the first time we've been given the opportunity to make our own designations.
Perfect, thanks.
Just to my question, Ms. Kimball, and I know depending on the policy over my experience over the years, the process can change, and which is totally fine with me. I'm not critiquing that. But are we looking to make a decision tonight, or are we waiting for the APs to come in?
No, we're not looking for the APs to come in. I think sometimes this board, depending on the complexity of the policy or wanting to get feedback on it, has wanted a second read. Obviously, state law would have liked this policy to be in place by July 1. So if the board is comfortable just moving it to action and voting on it tonight, that would be great. If they'd like a second read, we can put it either on the consent agenda for the next board meeting. It's certainly just up to the board, but those are the options.
Thank you, Ms. Kimball. Board members, with that information and discussion, I would entertain a motion or more feedback about how I might want to move forward.
I make a motion to move it to the discussion agenda.
I second.
Action.
Or
That word.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Second. Action.
All right, so we have a
Needs to do something.
motion from Amanda, a second from Charlotte. Is there any further discussion? All right, seeing none, we'll take a roll call vote, starting with Board Member Williams.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Charlotte Fife Jefferson, yes.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Nick Salazar, yes.
Brian Jensen, yes.
Amanda Longley, yes.
All right, that motion passes. We'll revisit this on the action agenda. Number 4 of our discussion agenda, we have long-term closure and district reconfiguration recommendations. Dr. Grant?
So our G5 administrator, Brian Connolly, will be presenting the district's recommendations under this policy. Welcome, Brian.
Board, thank you for having me here tonight.
Will you pull that mic close to you as you present? Thank you.
So again, thank you, board, for having me here tonight. My name is Brian Conley, the Boundaries and Planning Director for our district. And tonight, you will see recommendations regarding our grade level reconfiguration and long-term closures following policy G5. G5 was amended a bit about 9 months ago, and then the administrative procedures saw quite a bit of change about 4 months ago. So you'll see and hear some of that, why I'll be describing part of the process as we go as well. Our aim is to build vibrant learning communities and use resources efficiently for student learning. And we do believe that as a district, we can do this regardless of our student population, whether that's increasing or decreasing. We really think that our focus needs to remain on trying to have that robust learning community, multiple classes per grade, especially in those elementary schools. And that really works, we think, best for many aspects of what we're doing as a district to help student learning. Today, we're going to talk about 3 schools and their programs that we do want to study further. So this slide that you see in front of you right now is a bulleted list of the long-term school closure process. The administrative procedures for this policy are about 6 or 7 pages in the administrative procedures, and not all of it is just about closure process, but wanted to highlight these 7 points along in this process. With the first one being that the information gathered to present to the board at least 90 days prior to board vote is some of the information that you're going to be seeing today. Board would then make and approve the motion to initiate the process. So these are requested actions. The requested actions that you're going to see are going to be coming up here later in this presentation. Then district personnel, myself, along with other people, where depending on which sites we're looking at and which programs we're looking at, will be studied further. But before that happens, we will send through Yandere Chatwin's office the required notifications to really begin the in-depth study of the factors to determine the viability and appropriateness of closing the identified schools or school. There will be a public opportunity to review the in-depth study for a minimum of 30 days. And proposed closure will also be presented at information sessions or a session. State law requires a public comment opportunity and that a school closure decision be made by the board prior to December 31st. We have a recommended timeline that we would be following that I'll be showing you as well. And if circumstances require an extension of any specific time frame, you, the board, will be notified with an explanation in a public meeting. So the first recommendation is to study Innovations Early College High School for potential long-term closure. On this slide, you see the timeline we plan to follow. You can see, looking at this timeline, the public, if you as board members say, yep, let's study this further, the public would first see the in-depth study in early October. We're doing a November vote to meet the board expectation of letting families know as soon as possible. Even though the state timeline is December 31st, there was quite a bit of discussion over the past few months in the spring about, hey, let's try to let families know as soon as we can about the work that's going on. This presentation is about having us do an in-depth study. Again, we're not asking the board to make any final decision on what to do with Innovations Early College High School right now at this moment. We just want to start that study. Not starting the study now pushes the vote to December, and that gives families less time to know what to do. So a little bit about Innovations Early College High School, a little bit about the background here. Innovations opened in the 2012-2013 school year, and there was, in this model, a few pieces that we'd either seen very limited or not at all in our district at the time. One of them that we had seen, but again, one that was a focus for Innovations has been access to on-campus concurrent enrollment opportunities for students, that third bullet down. And something that we hadn't seen too much of in 2012-2013 up to that point was the blended learning model described in bullet number 2. And it really, one of the purposes of Innovations was to try to re-engage students who had disengaged from our traditional high schools. There were also homeschooled students that we were hoping to also be able to bring back into public education from their homeschool experience. Our rationale for wanting to go forward with an in-depth study is that, and the reason why we recommend this review of Innovations is to access whether it continues to fulfill its original mission of offering a unique instructional model. We suspect it's not meeting its original intent. Preliminary data would point to that. The low enrollment is one of the factors we saw, as you can see on this graph as well, and limited utilization of on-campus Salt Lake Community College concurrent enrollment courses. You can see what the numbers look like over the past 6 years here. I will say that though they were up higher in 21, 22, 23, we also had higher school enrollment at that point too, and that's been dropping off. So our requested actions are to approve a motion to study Innovations Early College High School for potential closure and to initiate the district sending the required notifications in accordance with state law, and to direct staff to hold an information session for stakeholders at Innovations Early College High School. We do have, with work that Dr. Reese has been doing also with our executive director Chatwin, having that timeline really spelled out specifically about notifications and when they'll be sent. We also have a recommendation here to study the Magnet Special Enrollment Program at Washington Elementary for potential closure. This is something that I know has been on your agenda in the past year. We do believe that in order to comply with state policy, we need to go through the study and get to a November vote, get a vote on the program. The pilot was determined not to be renewed, but in looking at state policy, we wanted to go through with this because G5 does cover process for closure of a special enrollment program now. You can see here, again, proposed closure for this would follow the school closure process outlined in section 2. So you'll see that it's very similar to the other timetable that we just gave, trying to keep those aligned, but also it states right there in our G5 administrative procedures that it does follow that same process. And a little bit about our magnet program, background and rationale. Washington was originally opened as a 3-year pilot program, and as I mentioned previously, board discussions last year led to non-renewal of the pilot program. 6th graders at Washington in this magnet program will be the last grade in the current school year. So we don't have 4th or 5th graders there right now in that magnet program, just 6th grade, and they'll finish up this year. So our requested actions would be to approve the study of Washington Magnet Special Enrollment Program for potential closure and to initiate the district sending the required notifications in accordance with state law, and to direct staff to hold an information session for stakeholders at Washington Elementary School. Last, we have a recommendation to reconfigure Nibley Park Elementary as an elementary school rather than a K-8. Even though this process here does have, there is a different possible timeline on this process, where we would like to align it to the others presented tonight, doing this earlier than we might typically see, because that would give parents, families more time to make the adjustments that would be needed if this reconfiguration were to happen. This is a process that is also described in the G5 administrative procedures, and the Superintendent Grant will make that recommendation to the board and made at least 60 days prior to any board action. So if this recommendation does have the support of the board would hold a public comment period during an upcoming board meeting to gather public input on this recommendation. And you can see here, whoops, I somehow have a couple wrong dates right. Let me see here. Should have said 2025. I've got some wrong year on there, so my apology. A little bit on Nibley Park background. Looking back on February 18th, both Dr. Hall and Dallin Miller presented what came from the middle level group report, and it identified concerns with the current K-8 configuration. Example of that was limited access to a full core curriculum for grades 7 and 8 due to low enrollment, resulting in reduced course offerings. And music, fine arts, PE, and STEM are delivered using an elementary model, limiting the instructional depth appropriate for middle grades. And there was no access to honors, accelerated math courses, or world language instruction at Nibley. Bottom line is the rationale for looking at this, as you may recall, was students not in this report where students were not receiving equitable learning opportunities compared to peers in other middle grade settings. A little bit of the history of 7-8, you did see this last in the springtime when it was presented. Our 2025-26 anticipated enrollment is 64 students. I believe 18 of those 64 would be 7th graders. That's what's anticipated for this coming year. So most of them obviously being 8th graders out of those 64. So Nibley Park's enrollment has not supported staffing a full team of highly qualified secondary teachers to meet state course requirements. And Nibley Park's 7th and 8th grade students reside within the Hillside Middle School boundaries currently. Some students who live in the Nibley Park boundary choose to go to Hillside. Some do open enrollment for other schools as well, Clayton and others. Many of the students do choose to attend a traditional middle school rather than remain at Nibley. Majority of them looks like Hillside, but some to other middle schools as well through open enrollment. So our requested actions for Nibley would be to direct staff to move forward with further study of grade level reconfiguration to begin the 26-27 school year, and to hold an information session. One was held in February of this year, but to have another one this fall for stakeholders at Nibley. So as a summary, here is a summary of the action requests that we're making. And won't read through those again. You've seen them on the previous slides, but wanted to summarize it on one slide here. And with that information, be open for any questions, comments, or discussion we could have on this.
I was wondering about innovations, if is there still support from Salt Lake Community College for this partnership? Is it, or is that kind of a waning?
That'll be a great question to answer in our in-depth study.
Oh, yeah.
Will be,
Okay.
this is
You'll be
really,
studying that.
yeah, the purpose of tonight is really to just get that in-depth study going based on the information that we have right now.
And just to clarify, we've not seen a drop off in the support from Salt Lake Community College for partnering in the program.
Okay. You included enrollment from 2020. I wondered if you could give us enrollment numbers from 2013, from when it started. It would just be nice to see the whole picture pre-COVID, pre-pandemic. In the study.
Thank you.
Ashley?
So in recent months, the board approved a new CTC to go to Riley Elementary's campus starting next fall. And when we had those discussions as a board, we talked about how the current programs in that building's site, which does include innovations, could move turnkey into the Riley campus. What changed between the board recently approving the CTC and the recommendation for this study?
Will you mention that again? I didn't catch turnkey, so what were you meaning
In
there?
our discussions, we talked about how the programs housed in the current building, which includes innovations, would move into a new campus. So what changed between moving and the recommendation for study?
So there's the two programs there in the SLIC campus. On the second floor is the Innovations Early College High School. On the ground floor is the CTC. We only approved the move. The plan is only to move the CTC, not to move Innovations Early College High School, because those are two such distinct programs.
I guess that wasn't clear to me when we had those discussions, not least of all because the reason students enrolled in the CTC is because those are the kinds of courses they were taking. So with that confusion in mind, I am supportive of the study. That's how we learn what we should do, is by studying items. But I'm a little concerned that we're asked to approve a center with this subtext that now we left the center empty. So perhaps that necessitates this program not being able to continue. And I think it relates to concerns I shared about Nibley Park in prior meetings, that when we don't have really direct conversations about the order in which we're addressing board-directed programs with new district initiatives, it means that in the case of Nibley, we had a board-directed K-8, district specialty programs were moved in that did not require board approval, and that resulted in their loss of physical classroom space. And in this case, it's the inverse of that, where we discussed moving programs out of the building that houses this, and now that leaves this in a potentially empty building. So I'm a little concerned that when we're not upfront about the relationship of those things with the public, it gives our community an ongoing feeling that our decisions about school closure and changes to programs are predetermined, or it validates an ascription of intent that is probably unlikely, where there's a feeling that programs are maybe allowed to fail to enable other changes, rather than just talking about the sequence of events we want to have happen. And I think a consequence of doing business in that way is we miss out on analyzing some of the direct trade-offs between advancing some of our programs while planning to discontinue others or thinking about discontinuing others. And our public comment tonight indicates that the loss of courtesy stops as a long-standing promise to our district families is just one example of what happens when we don't learn about the direct costs of some of the changes we're making, like CTC or DLI relocation or expansion. So I think again, I want to approve the study because the study is the way we will learn what to do. But I do think we should take special attention that the study address enrollment trends, transportation routes, and costs that are disaggregated by the programs that both of these sites house, rather than just the program we're recommending to reconfigure or close. I think, again, a big consequence we need to consider as a board is we anticipate declining enrollment across the board due to factors outside of our control. So it's really important that we think about the community having a lot of trust in our school closure process or our reconfiguration process, rather than continuing to feel how they feel, which is that, you know, what Nibley Park family said in the last community meeting, that they think the fix is in. And so I think it's important that we consider how all of these things are part of larger systems as we go through the study process.
Thank you, and we can bring more information on this and the difference. I think particularly one of the challenges in this all the way along has been that people have conflated the two programs in that Salt Lake Community College Center there, so that they mix what is the career connected learning and the innovations program. And it has all been kind of called innovations as a shorthand. But this is very clearly just about the innovations program, separate from the career connected learning program, our CTE Career and Technical Center. So we'll clarify that some more. I think that's important because people get mixed up. And to make sure that the board is confident that what we have brought to the board is disconnected from the CTC work. There is the possibility that innovations could stay in the Salt Lake Community College space for the next, I believe, 90-something years is the least that we have in that place, so that there shouldn't be a conflation of space concerns when we're looking at this. It's purely about whether or not this school site continues.
Amanda?
I just want to add to Dr. Grant's explanation of the separation of the Innovations Early College and the CTE conversation. And my understanding was that the CTE move was just for the CTE Center. And I did go over and do a walkthrough of the Innovations Early College, so how that floor laid out compared to the CTE area and how that functioned. And that helped give me a visual perspective as we were going into that CTE conversation and that CTE move, and understanding how innovations was that collaboration. It was intended to be a collaboration with the community college, but, you know, from my understanding, because their focus was more arts, that's added a little bit of challenge to that, like, partnership program. So I just wanted to say that I did understand the intent of that CTE move was for CTE only, and that innovations wasn't discussed at that point. And so I see where we're coming from in this conversation.
Any other questions or comments on the discussion? So I'm gonna look at Bryce and Brian first before we move to round two. Round two, I saw Ashley and then Charlotte.
I would just like some clarification on the action that's required. Can you explain again why we are being requested to act about reconfiguration and potential closure of a program? Or sorry, potential closure of a program and potential closure of a school, but we do not act about grade level reconfiguration. We only hear the recommendation, and hearing it alone kicks off the study. Is that correct?
Yes, there's a different, in the G5 administrative procedures, there is for grade level reconfiguration within schools. It's a much shorter described on page 5 of those. So it does fall under a different set of, a different process, even though it is all under the same administrative procedures.
So what it asks is that the district bring this to the board essentially, and there's 60 days to make this decision. We decided to go on the time frame of all the other work just to make it simpler for the board to manage, and and to give plenty of time, so we're using the longer time frame. And then it says on G5, if the recommendation has the support of the board will hold one public comment period during an upcoming board meeting and then make a decision. So we're asking just for the board's thumbs up, kind of your direction to move forward so that you're comfortable with us moving forward with the process. And then the decision itself is the board's decision ultimately.
So for clarity, you're not seeking an actual motion, you just want to
Right.
impromptu.
This one's written differently. To do grade level reconfiguration within our policy is a different process. We're linking it up time-wise with the other ones so that we give the community members enough time to weigh in and to provide feedback to the board, as well as enough time to make any changes, board requests to get these decisions made as soon as possible. So we're linking them up, but it's running on a different process that doesn't need actually a vote to move it forward, if that makes sense. Just as written, it says if the board supports the recommendation, then we'll continue with the process.
Thank you, Amanda, for the clarification question. And Charlotte?
I just wanted to mention that I agree with Amanda that I thought it was just the CTC Center moving, but I do understand what Ashley was saying about how decisions we make affect other programming, so there is, you have to think about the consequences of things and the way things happen, so.
Thank you, Charlotte. Any other questions for Brian Conley or the superintendent? All right, seeing none, I think now would be the time to indicate whether we would like to move forward with the reconfiguration through a kind of a straw poll or thumbs up. And then we would seek a motion to move the other two remaining recommendations to the action agenda. Thumbs up, 2, 3, 4. That's the majority. So Dr. Grant will go ahead and move forward with that. And then we'll look for a motion to move the two other recommendations regarding innovations and Washington Elementary Special Enrollment Program to the action agenda.
I move that the board move the discussion items relating to the potential long-term closure of Innovations Early College High School and Washington's Elementary Special Enrollment Program to the action agenda.
I second.
And then that was just innovations, correct, Amanda?
That was early high school and Washington.
Okay, perfect.
When we
Sorry,
get to
I
action
missed
agenda, then we'll separate them out.
Thank you, I got
for
that.
this document.
I've got a motion on the table in a second. Is there any further discussion? All right, seeing none, we'll start with a roll call vote with board member Charlotte Fife Jefferson.
Charlotte Fife Jefferson, yes.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Nick Salazar, yes.
Brian Jensen, yes.
Amanda Longbow, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
All right, that motion passes. Thank you, board. Thank you, Brian, for being with us this evening, and Dr. Grant for walking us through the policy and the APs there. Moving to our action agenda, we have 4 items. The first one being consent agenda item number 7. And I'll just recap what we have there. Consent agenda item number 9. We have the new board policy P14. And then we have just the motion that we just made regarding early college high school innovations in Washington Elementary Special Program.
And consent agenda item number 7.
7 and 9.
7.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Alan. So we'll start with consent agenda number 7. Is there a motion on the table to start the discussion and potential action?
And we're gonna do the 2 consent agenda items separately, right?
Yeah.
So I have a motion to approve the Human Resources Service Report, Exhibit 3B7.
We have a motion. Is there a second on the table?
I'm sorry, to approve it for discussion? Or
It's already on action.
Sorry.
We have a motion and now a second.
Oh.
Any further discussion? Ashley?
The reason I wanted to bring this to the public meeting is to ask the questions in public rather than, just electronically. And I'm wondering, given the time-sensitive nature between this meeting and the start of school, if we can hear about how many administrative and teacher vacancies we still have after ratifying this report, and then what the approach will be of the district to fill those vacancies, given that the board cannot ratify new HR reports prior to the start of the school year at this point.
Hello, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to come and speak to this. We do have one additional administrative opening at Emerson Elementary. The interview team for that position is interviewing initial interviews later this week, and the final interviews are scheduled for early next week. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to have an announcement for the Emerson principal, which is our last administrative vacancy for the year, or for this coming school year, by the end of next week. I reported yesterday that we had 21 teacher positions on our job posting board as of yesterday. 6 were in process of being offered contracts yesterday, and we offered 2 more special ed position contracts earlier today, so that brings us down to a total of 13. So it's not abnormal for us to have openings at this time of year. In fact, we had 5 teacher resignations just last week, and so it is a moving target at this point, but the HR department and hiring managers in the schools are moving forward as quickly as possible to fill these positions. And specifically to your question about how we move forward in that process is Board Policy P13 provides the superintendent and myself as the human resources representative to move forward in the hiring process with final approval pending upon board approval for those particular hires. So we'll move forward in processing and finding the most qualified candidates for those positions and making referrals to you as the school board to make the final approval at the next available board meeting after that.
As a follow-up question to that, in an emergent situation, especially with an administrator, especially an administrator of a school where there's a specialty program, a special education hub that obviously requires potentially more expertise than the average elementary school, what would be an emergent solution in our district procedures for ensuring that students have a principal at the start of school?
That's a good point. We would either name an interim principal or find a suitable substitute to be able to start the school year. So just like any classroom or school position, we want to make sure that those are filled in any way that we can. And so depending on the circumstances, we would make sure that there's a suitable substitute there.
And then just to use the rest of my time, I think you have been really great about explaining to us, you know, the way in which we're trying to change our practice so that we don't have this amount of vacancies or we don't see so many resignations right before the start of the school year. Are there any updates to how we're addressing these cascading effects of employee attrition or transfer as we go through the summer? Or is there a time of year at which that would be most optimal for the board to discuss?
My staff and I are looking into, well, I want to separate that into 2 different procedures. The written agreement that we have with our Salt Lake Education Association outlines teacher transfer processes, and in order to make any changes there, we would have to do so through the negotiations process. And I feel that our transfer window, we have addressed that over the last few years, actually just a few years ago, and that's made improvements in terms of internal teacher transfers impacting the openings that we have in classrooms. And so I think we're in pretty good shape there. We can't control when people leave for various reasons, relocations or just thinking the grass is greener somewhere else. We are seeing an increase in volume in hires. I believe we hired 1/3 more employees overall in the district this last year than we did just the year prior. And that was an increase over the year prior to that. So we're seeing a continual increase in the number of overall turnover in all of our positions. With the current climate in the universe, I think that we're expecting to see more and more of that in the years ahead. As far as the administrative turnover, my staff and I are looking into ways and also having conversations with Dr. Grant and Dr. Taylor about what will be the most optimal way of initiating administrator hires for the preceding school year after the 25-26 school year, so that we are being able to be more proactive in hiring earlier in the season.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I appreciate your saying that you're trying to look at that administrative side, because this does seem to be kind of a recurring problem. We had the same challenge last year, and I mean, I don't want to get into how we had assistant principals that went to West and then that left vacancies in junior high. I mean, it's that cascading effect that Ashley's talking about, and it seems like this would be something worth looking at. Is there a dynamic here that we can start earlier, or something that, so the cascade comes earlier rather than later?
That's certainly the hope, yeah.
And then, on those 5 teachers that resigned, do you know whether they're going to another school, or do you know that they've just decided that now's their time to retire?
I don't know of any retirements. I know that one is moving out of the country. There
Okay.
is a variety of reasons, but I
What
don't
I'm
think
getting
any.
at there, and we've talked a little bit about this in the past as well, Ashley, and that's, there are other school districts that offer quite an incentive back in January or December, and Alan's over there smiling. Of course, all of this costs money, but I guess when I hear resignation at this point, I'm also kind of thinking, okay, maybe this individual that decided to go out of the country or whatever, if there had been a greater incentive back in January, maybe that would have paid for them going out of the country. And they would have said, oh yeah, you know, I'm going to draw on that particular incentive. I don't know if that's something that we want to look at more, or maybe 5 isn't that large of a number. I'm just saying, our program is competing with other programs that give substantially more.
Point well taken, for sure.
If you
So
can
we're
convince
operating-
the business administrator to make a change that way.
I'm just saying that's one of the things that we're dealing with.
I would like to state that I prefer to pay my employees that are working for me the money versus those that are leaving, okay?
Thank you, and thank you for the humor as well, Mike and Alan.
I want to respond to that more generally, if I may, and that is, we understand and see the same problems you're seeing. We have tried different things. We've tried changing the incentive payment. We've tried getting people to let us know earlier. We've tried to cut down on the number of cascading effects there are in people moving around, and we'll continue to do that. We're working this fall together to look again, particularly at the administrative positions, and how we get the proper administrative pool in hand so that we can make appointments as quickly as possible. So we are looking again at another option than that which we've used in the last 2 years.
One step in the right direction in that vein is the implementation of the new administrative intern position that we just recently hired for West High School. So I think that is going to help us have an internal pool that we're able to draw from as well. That should be able to help us in filling some of those internal vacancies.
Thank you, and that leads me to just one last question, Dr. Grant and Logan, while you're here. You know, the board's been talking a lot about efficiencies and norms and how we follow up to these things. Do you, both of you, have a recommendation on when we might want to revisit that? I guess it's kind of like a pilot, right, where we're starting kind of small and seeing how it plays out and if it could be expanded upon or what have you. Is there a time frame that you might recommend that we might want to revisit how this has worked, this intern program has worked out at West and with the candidate that's taken that position?
One person might be hard to give too much. It's not quite a pilot because it's just one person.
Okay.
So our idea is that we would look in this coming year to implement a broader assistant principal type training program, which would be this intern position. So we'd want to hire that for the coming year. So we don't quite have a pilot in place yet for that kind of position, but
Be something to think about as we move forward. Okay.
in fact, we could probably give you information on how we want to set that up in the spring.
Yeah, I think I would want to look at that in two ways. One, when we're looking at the new budget for the next school year, as well as around the summertime of next year to see like how it went with the one position that we have, but also looking earlier in the early winter to be able to see what funding might we have available for the upcoming year to implement a more robust program.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Good, of course.
If there's no further discussion, Charlotte, go ahead.
I was gone, so I don't know if this question was asked, but do we know if our Title I schools, I'm just wondering about, are those schools somewhat difficult to keep all of the teachers in? I don't know.
That's the $1,000,000 question. It depends on the position, to be honest. Like was mentioned earlier, the positions that are most hard to fill are special education, secondary math, secondary science. Those really are the most difficult, and it's primarily because there are fewer qualified candidates in the state than there are positions. So it's easy for me to say those are the ones that are hardest because there aren't enough licensed individuals in those areas to really fit the need of all the schools in the state. But your question to Title I schools versus non-Title I schools, I don't know the exact number or ratio of the current positions that we have open.
Okay.
It does typically take a little bit longer to fill positions at Title I schools. It is. We have good success in filling those positions. Thankfully, the federal programs for teacher loan forgiveness help with incentivizing early career educators into those positions because they have high financial incentives to work in Title I schools. But it is a challenge, for sure. It's something we're constantly looking for.
Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you, Logan.
Of course.
Dr. Grant. With that, I'll go ahead and start a roll call vote with Board Member Anderson.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Ryan Jensen, yes.
Amanda Longo, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Charlotte Fife Jefferson, yes.
Thank you, Board. Moving on to item number 9, reclassification of the construction project manager position.
I move that we reclassify the construction project manager position as attached in Exhibit 3B9.
Is there a second to the motion?
I second.
We got a second by Amanda in discussion. Ashley?
So I asked that this be pulled just because I wanted to make a point of clarification that in February, our board approved the title and probable lane of this position. And when we made that approval, I understood the implication to be that this would come back for discussion when we had approved the actual cost. Not because I think the discussion would be controversial or people wouldn't want to reclassify this position. It's obviously well explained in the memo that it's revenue neutral, but especially because our district is so often criticized for having administrative expenses, whether or not that's always justifiable, as our business administrator will regularly point out in his presentations. But I think it's important that when there's an ongoing addition of an administrative role, there be a public discussion about how it will be funded with public tax dollars, even if that discussion will be really limited, and just give our business administrator a chance to explain the way in which this was neutral and the job study that was done, however briefly. I think that there's 2 ways that could happen based on our current governing structure, and one is to place it on the discussion agenda so we can describe what happened to the public and then make a decision as board. The other would be that our finance committee is tasked in our handbook with the form and content of financial information that comes to the board and advising on other information items as needed. So if it was preferable to consent rather than discuss, it would be helpful if at least 3 board members kind of owned this decision so that board members who weren't part of the discussion would be able to have their questions answered and there would be some institutional memory about how the job was created, why it was changed, and some accountability to the public. So with that in mind, obviously I made the motion to approve it because I think it's really reasonable, but I'm hopeful that our business administrator would be permitted to just speak quickly to why the lane was changed as a result of the job study and explain for the public that what we had previously given approval for in February is revenue neutral despite the increase of the overall costs for the employee.
Please.
All right, just clarification, you use the word administrative salary. I just want to be clear, this is not an administrator. Sometimes that gets...
Correct. Administrative position meaning non-educator
yes.
position. Thank you.
So first, so when this was approved, as noted in the memo, it was approved on lane G of the The exempt salary schedule is what it's called. So we posted it as that lane, with the qualifications that were required in the job description. And we didn't attract any qualified candidates to fill the position. And, you know, since that was February, this has been several months. So we reconvened the discussion, looked at the qualifications and looked at the salary, and because the best test of are you at market salary is put it out there and see who applies. So we determined we were low, so we're recommending the 2-lane change to that. In addition, there's another position, incumbent's currently retired. We've reallocated some of the tasks of that position, and we've lowered that position before it gets posted. And that's, technically it's a net savings of a couple $100, but that's close to net zero. So, there's no additional budget required by this position because any increase is being absorbed by the decrease in another position.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Any further discussion, questions, or comments? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and start with a roll call vote with Vice President Jensen.
Brian Jensen, yes.
Amanda Longo, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Charlotte Fife Jefferson, yes.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes. Thank you, Board. Moving on to new Board Policy P14, I will entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve board policy P14 as posted.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the table. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll start with a roll call vote with Board Member Williams.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Charlotte Fife Jefferson, yes.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Brian Jensen, yes.
Amanda Longo, yes.
Excellent, thank you, Board. Moving on to our final action agenda item, which is the long-term closure and district reconfiguration recommendations. Per our policy, we need 2 separate approvals or actions taken. We would need one for innovations and we would need a separate one for Washington.
I move that the board approve the further study of innovations early college, high school for potential long-term closure.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll start with a roll call vote with Charlotte.
Charlotte Fife Jefferson, yes.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Brian Jensen, yes.
Amanda Longo, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
That motion passes, thank you. And a motion regarding Washington.
I move that the board approve the further study of Washington Elementary School's magnet special enrollment program for potential closure.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I know we've got to finish this one. I would ask that we clarify the motion that is for the, some proper terminology. Let me get there.
I thought I said magnet school. Is there another term that?
Well, magnet to me is
That can
a
be any.
loose
Magnet
statement.
special enrollment.
Oh, it's our new name for
It's-
the ELP
Yeah,
program.
but it's the AMP program.
Magnet
Not the
gifted.
AMP,
It's magnet gifted and talented, isn't it?
yeah.
Just magnet, all right,
Yep.
then forget.
I like it.
It's a name change.
Thank you, Amanda. And Ashley?
Yes, our board governing documents indicate that it's important for people to identify the reason for an abstention. So I wanted to remind both my colleagues and the public that because I have a student in the magnet program at Washington, I choose to abstain from voting on this program as a potential conflict. I realize this is a procedurally required redundancy and the program is already discontinued, but I'm behooved to follow the same course of action for ethical consistency.
Thank you for that, Ashley, and I know you did that when we made this decision a while ago too, so thank you. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, we will start with a roll call vote with Vice President Jensen.
Brian Jensen, yes.
Amanda Longo, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Charlotte Fife Jefferson, yes.
Ashley Anderson, abstain.
Nate Salazar, yes. That motion passes. Thank you, Board. We have concluded our action agenda. We will move into our reports section, being that we have a little bit of extra time than we anticipated, which is good. Superintendent.
I do have a few things. First, just to give a shout out to our team, our district leaders, our executive directors and directors for the really impressive and effective Administrative Institute that was held this last week, Monday through Thursday, was training for all of our school administrators. They heard from most of the district offices and was a really, I think, it was an effective event, and I just want to give a shout out to the team for all the work that goes into preparing for that. You know that our teachers are back on Tuesday. We have plans too for professional development, those first days for teachers as well. So that'll happen on the 12th and the 13th. And I can give an early shout out to the team for all the work they've done on that. They've been planning for months to have meaningful sessions available for teachers when they return on the 12th. Also, a shout out to the team that put together the website and got us up and running with a new provider. Our contract with the old provider ended so that we had to start August 1st, which isn't an ideal date when we're also trying to register students. But I know they've been working hard on that, and the new website looks good. We're going to continue to update some pages over the coming days and get that going. I also wanted to mention to the board, there's the Committed to Excellence breakfast with stakeholders and administrators Thursday morning. Encourage you to attend. It's a nice event where we also get to honor our teachers and counselors and classified staff of the year, those folks who help make this district tick and make us unique. And so it's a nice time that way. There is one more thing I want to raise, and that is the registration challenges. I appreciate the board members who have let me know and have been so clear with our IT department about what the actual challenges are. I wanted to give you a little bit of background and let families know that we have received 180 requests for support on registration. 174 of those have been closed. So we're out on 6 of those requests. I want you to know that you're hearing from people who are frustrated, and deservedly so, with some of the problems that we've had. One was the website dropped off. That was our provider who had an internet droppage. That wasn't on us, but the provider did, and so the website was out for too long during the registration time right now that we're in. 98,000 students, 9,800, let me say that again. We've really grown in enrollment. 9,800 students, over 50% of our students have registered. We just have 1,400 registered today. And if parents are unable, if families are unable to get their students registered, I appreciate board members have been directing them to the webpage where there's a form to submit. That's the one that the IT department is getting on and trying to provide feedback to families about what's happened. I also wanted to say some of these problems have come because we've asked families to put in a new personal identification number, their PIN, in order to access the registration portal. We're not doing that to bug everybody to get their PIN changed, but rather because of the recent PowerSchool breach that happened last year, as well as the audit that the IT department has held to try and understand our security weaknesses. This is one way to fortify our student data. So we're asking families to put in a new PIN so that we can upgrade our security on their data in particular. So we know it's an extra step that's kind of bothersome at times, but also it's meant to be held student data secure. Please continue to reach out to the help desk, fill out forms if you're finding trouble with registration. Also, our registrars and school secretaries are back today. So this is the first day that we get the rest of the complement of employees that are supporting this work, including our middle school and high school counselors. So again, they're just beginning now. So now we have the people in place that can help start to solve some of the challenges ahead and make sure families are able to get registered. And please know we're trying to fix the problems as fast as we discover them, and I appreciate the board members are helping us see those so that we can respond to them. That's it.
Dr. Graham. You wanna go?
I was just saying, I'd go, if you're signing. Okay, I just wanted to, I told you I sent out an email about the Salt Lake Education Foundation board meeting that I attended as board leadership, and Bryce was there as well. I thought that it was a very productive meeting, but to me, one of the things that was really wonderful was to see the support of the foundation and how they the board unanimously approved supporting these 3 projects that are before us right now. The Highland and West High health clinics in the rebuilds, the Glendale track, and then, oh yeah, the CTE, excuse me. There was a conversation about each of those, and we were tasked with being on a project, we board members. So I'm reporting to you that I am on the Highland and West High Clinic. Nate wasn't there, so Nate, I hope that you were okay.
I've got word of it, yeah.
Okay. Nate, you're the Glendale track. And Bryce, you're covering us on the CTE.
Yep.
Okay. Then the other report that I would, and it's not a report, but just a reminder, is my past USBA experience would dictate. There is a policy webinar tomorrow provided by USBA. And I think those are really beneficial policy courses.
Thank you. Charlotte, do you have a board member report this evening?
Well, I'm wondering if maybe we could start at that end, because we always start here,
Okay.
and then sometimes I take other board members.
Still there, thunder.
I steal their thunder, yeah.
Amanda, Bryce, or Ashley?
Along with the conversation about the website switchover and the struggles with the registration process, I would just kind of emphasize back to the school counselors, extra patience with the students as they're trying to look at their school schedules and restructuring them. For example, today was the first day at Highland High School that they had a 3-hour block for students to go and address their schedules and get them corrected. And after 3 hours in the wait line, it got shut down with students not being able to meet with their counselors. So there are much needed changes outside of just cause. And so just hopefully they're being really patient and really working to help these kids get the schedule that they really need for their future interests and whatnot. So that's all.
Brian did steal my thunder, so it's fine. No, you're fine. And the only other thing I was gonna bring up is the issue with registration, which the superintendent addressed, so thank you.
Yeah, I have a couple of things. I don't have specific committee business to report because the committees I serve on have not convened since our last meeting. But I did want to remind the board that with the precinct 5 vacancy, we should be considering potential associated shuffling of our committees and our thoughts. I also appreciate the attention paid to the website rollout difficulties in the superintendent's report. And I will confess that I have not been able to successfully register either of my kids because not all of the required links are active in PowerSchool for their school handbooks, which I'm required to say that I saw. I think my house has 2 of the 6 unresolved tickets, but I do appreciate that IT staff are using the comment box and correcting items as quickly as possible. But I did want to note that as a school board member, if I have challenges despite having the best access to the latest information and the staff who can help, I think there are certainly a greater number of parents having difficulty who may not understand who to reach out to. And if there are things we can do as board members, part of being an elected official is ensuring our communities have access to information with things like big changes. So I would just implore the district office to use us as a tool to be able to get the word out to the community, even that changes are coming, so that we can better describe like things that will be happening. And in related news, I think that It's been a challenge that some of our comprehensive high schools have released student schedules while others have not. And in many cases, I've opposed in these meetings top-down directives. I know our schools need flexibility, but realistically, all of our high school students should have access to their schedules and counseling services at the same time, so that that equivalent access can ensure their needs are met as the year kicks off. And I think, I don't want to diminish how hard everyone has to work at the start of the year. I just think we keep hearing the next solution for this is coming, it's coming, it's coming. And it really, I can't stress enough that as a parent, if I have not been able to register my 2 kids, I know that this is a challenge for people in the community. The last, I want to express some jealousy. I have noticed on peer board social media pages that a lot of boards are invited to things like Admin Institute and welcomes to faculty, and I would love to be more included in that to celebrate the administrators and teachers who are coming back to our buildings. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to going to some back-to-school nights and in my district, and also just starting the year off really, intentionally trying to get to know the admin and the SCC chairs and when they meet and get on that schedule so that I can really go to all the schools in my precinct. And I was recently invited to attend kind of a summit, I guess. It was, there was a group of education advocates or organizations that got together, and our assistant superintendent, Dr. Ruiz, was there. So it was called Utah Thriving. They issued a report that started under the governor's office in the Multicultural Affairs Department. And this was the second one, the part 2. The first report was about workforce development, but this is about education and specifically reducing disparities through legacy strategies. But what I liked about this is that the organizers, it's the Utah Center for Economic Opportunity and Belonging, and University of Utah College of Education and University Neighborhood Partners are brought together cross-sector, working on collaboration cross-sector and bipartisan to support, to make sure our students are getting, all students are getting their needs met in our state. And, but they have like 7 different strategies for helping our students thrive. And it's to create an environment of belonging for all, to support families and bolster communities, focus on early childhood opportunities, provide mental health supports, enable post-secondary opportunities, enhance experiential and career-connected learning, improve data collection and access. And this is all at all different levels of education, state, district, and at our district. So a lot of it we're doing and working on, but I think there's things we can improve on. And so I'm hoping that our district is going to be a part of it. And I don't know if Dr. Reese wants to talk about it if we have any time. I don't know, but that's all for now.
She would second what you have to say.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and use my time and just remind board members that we do have a need for a closed session after board member reports, so sit tight. I have one board member report for myself, and then one representing board member Bate. But the first one representing myself is we had a really, really good board retreat just a few days ago on Saturday. We met here at the district office, which some are like, that's not a retreat, Nate, that's just another board meeting. But nonetheless, we actually did talk about maybe changing the name of board retreat for next year. But we talked in bulk about our board norms, which includes a lot of communication, efficiencies, how we operate and work amongst ourselves with our superintendent, our BA, all district personnel. We conducted a board evaluation. We got to hear the results for that evaluation on Saturday as well, which in the same vein as what you just presented, Charlotte, there's always room for improvement. The unique element for me, which I know our board members talk a lot about without actually having some data to back it up, is community engagement. That was the one category that we all identified as board members where we could do a much better job as a board and as a district. So we'll be working on those things moving forward and throughout this coming next calendar year. We did decide that we would host board retreats, at least until there's a better name, and school board evaluations as well every June. Yep. So nonetheless, I'm really excited about that. That's something that a lot of us have been working on for a while. So thank you for your initiative and your participation in that. My last piece here for my board member report, in board member Bates' final action as a board member being that his resignation goes into effect this evening. He asked me to read just a brief statement since he wasn't able to be here tonight. So this is from Muhammad to the community, friends, families, students, and community of Salt Lake City School District. After months of financial, emotional, and mental strain, my family and I could no longer carry the weight of the long legal fight and the risk of trial despite my innocence. While I will always treasure having been elected to serve our community, I will no longer be participating as a school board member by the end of the day-to-day. Please keep my family and me in your prayers as we heal from this painful experience. And with that, I will seek a motion to move into closed session.
I move that the board go into closed executive session, discuss pending or reasonably imminent litigation and the deployment of security personnel, devices, or systems, and that the board adjourn immediately upon the conclusion of the closed session.
Second. A motion and a second on the table. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll start with a roll call vote with Board Member Williams.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Charlotte Five Jefferson, yes.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Brian Jensen, yes.
Amanda Longo, yes.
That motion passes. Thank you, community, everybody that's joined us online and in person for your participation.